And this whole wave of energy that's passing through our spiral arm of the galaxy is terrifying the elite for some reason. They're in hyper overdrive to get things done that should have taken years, now in months. It does seem that something has frightened the elite to try to no holds barred, forget even trying to drip feed, because there's only even less time left now because of this frequency wave is what I call it, but the base operational frequency of God itself that holds together all dimensional space, time, and everything else that resonates in the third dimensional form, from the atoms to the qubits and everything else, molecules, and all that energy field that unifies that in conscious thought, love, and light. Something's moving through that, and it's here, and it's terrifying the elite that we're going to become aware of it and maybe unite again. New studies show that by the time people reach their middle ages, the body often produces less than half of the collagen it did in their youth. Collagen is the main building block in our skin, making up 70 to 80% of it. This is why we get sagging skin and wrinkles as we age. If you want to look younger, you must supplement collagen, which will improve your skin's elasticity, make it smoother, more plump, and more youthful looking. That's why Ageless Multi-Collagen provides 5 key types of collagen you need from 4 different sources, essential to optimally support an array of full-body benefits. No odor, no taste, no clumping, unlike other collagen supplements. And this is why I recommend Health with Adapt 2030. Ageless Multi-Collagen, and look at that, I need another bag already. Quick way for youthful appearance. Use the link in the description box below for 51% off my favorite Ageless Multi-Collagen. And now on with the video. But as we look across the narrative scape, I'm not even going to call it a landscape any longer, it's a narrative scape. Why is it that we continue to be forced into a new way of life? Anything that you're forced into in terms of a belief system is not of the spirit or of the light if you're forced into it. If it's such a positive thing, it should naturally flow and people should accept it with glee. And I don't know, it seems that what we see, just like the CIA said, we will know our mission's complete when everything that people believe to be truth is a lie. And I think we're pretty much there. So bring us in with the Sunday law and how you see this biblical prophecy moving in through these next few years to fulfill what was told many thousands of years ago.
David, hey, I'm so glad we're able to finally connect. I definitely see some oddities happening within the ability to have just regular communication. It seems like it's across the board, but the thing that I see that's even greater than that is, and I'm just going to go straight to where we find it, 2 Corinthians 13:8. I'll go from the King James. It says, "For we can do nothing against the truth, but for the truth." And so even within all these different, modulations or moderations of what is allowed or what isn't allowed, just to be freely expressed, considered, even though in those different levels that we're seeing, it's harder to maybe speak what you're looking at freely, still the principle from the beginning of time on through eternity will always reign. It says that we can do nothing against the truth, but for the truth. So no matter how much of consistent opposition, what you say from the forces of darkness, or more so the restriction of liberties may be able to convey, even in that, we can have hope on top of hope, that nothing can be against it but for it. It's only going to project it even further because it will cause people to then question and consider themselves. But again, the core thing that we're actually looking at is liberty of conscience. And that's the core thing that was building up then, which then led right into forced religion. That's the issue, is the restriction of the liberty of conscience and the ability to express themselves freely. Hey, if you want to go worship a tree and you're not harming another, you should be able to do that. If you want to go and meditate within a Buddhist temple, you should be able to go do that. Shamanic practices, you should be able to go do that. And that's what the foundation of this country was based on and what it was supposed to be. But we see, just like you stated earlier, how it's shifting. Go through this line of thought to really see the method of biblical interpretation. But first and foremost, these promises from the Bible are for us to be fulfilled in and through us, to carry us through whatever we are going through into the end. Matthew 7:7, ask, and it shall be given. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Mark 11:23-24, if you believe unto this mountain, and you believe with all your heart, you could literally speak to it, and it will be cast into the sea. So that is the beautiful thing, is that we have a God is for us, that loves us, and has power in his word by going beyond, well, I hope I could see a result. Well, I believe it would be. So as we're in these challenges, as these different levels would be coming against us, we have a strong buckler that will fight for us, and we can stand in our freedom. What may look the most vulnerable or under-armored, small person right there can become the most linked with omnipotent and have angels that we do not see, power surrounding them when surrendered and allowing the Lord of the heaven, the creator of all, to stand for them. What is continuously happening? I try to keep my mind focused on what's going to get us through what's happening.
The very center bullseye of everything that's being talked about right now are rights, not the government given rights, inalienable rights given by the Creator to us as you're born, you're a sentient thinking human. This is the basis and the base of operation for all of you. And other things written down in words that then somehow the misinterpretation is now, oh, the government gave you that right. No, wait a second. No. These rights came from the Creator directly. Somehow government has stepped in the middle because you got these clowns out here double speaking. And I think the clown officials have spoken too quickly in a rush. But how the flip-flop of narrative is happening so quickly that if you remember and you don't have a memory of a goldfish, and you can actually step back and remember a year ago into the past on what these talking heads were saying, what they're saying now is completely 180 opposite. Before it would drip feed an entire generation. They must be in a panic mode because they're overplaying their hands so much right now that even the average person out there is going, wait a second. That happened way too quickly. You're trying to strip everything, including private property, ownership. So for me, swinging into the prophecy side of things, these changes that are here seem to be on a massive uptick to the point with something happening with our own Earth's atmosphere at this point and magnetic field in conjunction with a second magnetic field forming in the outer solar system to where we thought we might have had all the way until 2023 into 2024. But perhaps that signaling of Mars flaring with its aurora and the mineral composition of the crust, that suddenly everything needs to be pushed forward even faster because the awakening of the mind, and, Spencer, I'm sure you have a couple verses that talks about when there's a massive change, and I don't know what the catalyst would be, at least in biblical structure and verses, but for sure when the sun magnetic field changes, the frequency of God changes and the mind awakens. And here's where we sit. The awakening is happening so fast right now that governments are terrified of the people becoming much more aware. And this whole wave of energy that's passing through our spiral arm of the galaxy is terrifying the elite for some reason. They're in hyper overdrive to get things done that should have taken years now in months. So whatever's happening with the prophecy there, Spence, if you could maybe tick on that a little bit, because it does seem that something has frightened the elite to try to no holds barred, forget even trying to drip feed. It's going to be a smackdown, and this because there's only even less time left now because of this frequency wave is what I call it, but the base operational frequency of God itself that holds together all dimensional space, time, and everything else that resonates in the third dimensional form, from the atoms to the qubits and everything else, molecules, and all that energy field that unifies that in conscious thought, love, and light. Something's moving through that, and it's here, and it's terrifying the elite that we're going to become aware of it and maybe unite again.
Definitely. So that's exactly what's happening. Here's a few things to add. And I do think that because when we go beyond the physical and into the spiritual, so behind, let's say, for instance, every emotion, which then would determine the decision that we're making, starts with the thought. And from that thought comes an influence. Now, not every thought is our own. I've been learning definitely most recently to become more objective, remove yourself and see, well, where is this thought coming from? What's the influence? The reason why this is important is because those particular thoughts can trigger certain programs in our mind, which then would continue on with emotion, which then would continue on with decisions. So if the different levels of the elite, whether it's a Luciferian movement or this group or that thing, so if those thoughts are constantly influenced by a level of fear, then they're going to keep operating. On the underlying part is that I want to share from 2 Corinthians 10:4, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. So wait, check that out. The weapons of our warfare, they're not even carnal, but they're mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. What would those strongholds be? Those thoughts, those influences, those emotions? Surrendering and allowing that mind of God to operate within you. Now in Revelation 7:1, on to how things are speeding up faster, and I believe that the elite and the different groups are seeing things. Definitely, they had their plans. They had their giant food storages, controlling the food sources. So many different levels that go in hyperdrive. Revelation 7:1 says, and after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. 7:2. And then I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. That sealing, that separation is taking place right now. Polarization is taking place. And as that takes place and people are settling into the truth of their beliefs and freedom and living in that, more of these grand solar minimum events will take place. That means humans have a direct effect of what is taking place globally. There is a direct level of consciousness that we have at play even within these solar minimum cycles. And as that speeds up, then they're reacting. That is going to perpetuate and speed up more of these events to take place to go closer towards that Sunday law, which then would be put in through the same large institute that essentially pushed the Dark Ages, one world religion. If you're not operating playing that game, it's going to be, the challenge would be an understatement. Now, if we look at James 5:7, be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and the latter rain. The latter rain is coming, and we're in that era of the latter rain.
Yeah, that seems to be speeding up at the moment. Have you noticed manifestations occurring a bit faster? Thought resonances, pictures that you're looking at, visualizing, visualizations, mantras, whatever they might be. Thoughts, dreams seem to be happening on a faster level at the moment. But when you talked about the wind there for a second, you know, the wind's blowing, not blowing on the earth. I mean, is this a solar wind? Is this a cosmic ray outburst? Is this a gamma ray burst? Because you got to think about 2,000 years ago, if you follow our traditional timelines, people were walking around in leather shoes. They didn't know much, apparently. If you follow the traditional timelines, I'm saying we've been reset several times and technology comes up to a point. We get reset 1,000 years later. There's hardly any records 1,000 years ago. If it is, it's always the same ones regurgitated from the same gatekeepers of knowledge and information. I mean, it's very difficult to find real historical written records. And go try to put your fingers on a book that's 1,000 years old, like a physical. Not that it was rewritten, or go try to find 1,000-year-old manuscript that you can put your fingers on. Very few exist in the world. So much information has been lost. So when we come to these pinnacles, it seems that there's a reset back. And I'm wondering if it has anything to do with this wind that you're talking about. Solar wind, gamma ray burst, I don't know what it would be. But how would you describe that in a biblical sense 2,000 years ago to explain something that was coming from the heavens? And if you didn't have astronomy, but you did have soothsayers, astrologers, and those looking shamans at the skies, but how would you describe that wind that would affect the entire planet's jet streams, wind flow, cloud cells? Like, how would you explain that 2,000 years ago to, write it in a scripture that would then be valid to today? The term wind does that. But what do you think you notice that wind is? Particle density, actual physical wind blowing from something?
I mean, that's so true. Written in Hebrew at that time in Revelation, when John the Revelator was banned, he was thrown, I believe, into a pot of boiling oil. Nothing happened to him. Those people freaked out because God completely protected him, so they just decided to banish him to an island to where it's just like, man, get that guy out of here. Well, then he was given the book of Revelation through powerful vision. I can only imagine what that vision looked, what that was like to try to describe still only in human language. So when I pull up the word wind in that verse, and it's going into where I see pronounced animos, wind of violent agitation and stream of air, to a very strong tempestuous wind, the four principal or cardinal winds, hence the four corners of heaven. Since you take human language, which is mortal, very limited, to try to describe something that is immortal, we live in a three-dimensional world, something that is so infinitely dimensional, that's where the importance of actually taking that and going into line upon line, precept upon precept, so not one thing is subject to its own interpretation. Right there in Revelation 7:1, it's describing powerful winds.
Yeah, because everything is about lexicon and words, is it not? And if you think about how valuable and how powerful the words, the way they resonate. I had a good conversation with Michael Lazaro of Evolutionary Energy Art. And he was telling me that when he does mantras, if they try to use different English words, like we are speaking English right now, it doesn't nearly have the power as the Sanskrit words do. So the vibration in a word is one thing. But the meaning of another word, the way we construct the meaning of it. So when they talk about spelling, and you take it back to the old world where spells were cast using words. So where does that really come back to when you come back with prayer and you come back again with mantras and sounds and common sense? And how do you even have a discussion when almost every word in the English language is going to be banned? And you wonder how many cycles we've gone through with this.